Hi guys, and welcome to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, today at Drayton Park Golf Club. What I'm going to be filming today's video on is the difference in arm position from an iron setup to a driver setup. So we're going to go straight into it, and I'm going to give you a really simple checkpoint to make sure you're the right distance away and in the right setup position. So what I'm going to be using, I've got a mid-iron, I've got an 8-iron here, and I'm also going to show you the setup with the driver. And I've got a real simple checkpoint, and often people notice this. If you've seen any of my other videos, I have a check for a handspan gap from the end of the club to my body before I hit any shot. And it's just become second nature. I don't even realize I'm doing it anymore, but it's just to make sure I'm a consistent distance away. I've heard different coaches using different methods, but this has always worked for me, and I use it a lot in my coaching. So I've got, as I said, an 8-iron here. What I look for is when I get the club at playing angle, which is the club pretty flat to the floor, if anything, the toe of the golf club just slightly up in the air to allow for the bowing or bending in the shaft on the downswing. And I make sure that the ball is in the center of the golf club. With my feet together and my legs pretty straight, I'm checking for a handspan 4-finger gap from the end of the club to the top of my thigh. So when I open my feet apart to shoulder width here, and tilt forwards from my hips, I should get my arms in a very natural hanging position, hanging straight down from the center of my shoulder, which is what I'm really looking for. So that's my iron setup position. It's a natural arm hanging position, and a great way of checking if your arms are in the right place for your mid-irons would be from this position, let your right arm fall off the golf club, pretending it's gone really limp from the shoulder, and it should just swing naturally back onto the club where it was before. So it's really important that we get the right distance away from the end of the club, which is this 4-finger handspan gap. And then it's the tilt forwards from our hips to try and feel our pressure balls of our feet and allow our arms to just naturally hang from our shoulders. What you'll see is that gives me a bit of angle in my back of my lead wrist to club shaft, so we don't want our hands too high. When people get this, they're often over flexing the knees, high hands and spines very straight, so they'll feel their pressure back into their heels, and obviously my arms aren't in a natural hanging position that they would be from here. So quite simply, I've just got one on the tee here, as you can see, for my driver. I would still check for a handspan gap from the end of the club to the top of my thigh before opening my feet apart. So although I'm further away from the golf ball, I'm actually the same distance away from the end of the golf club. The club's got longer rather than me getting further away. What I see too often when amateurs hold a driver is they tend to be stretching a long way, again get very high hands, and you'll see this very unathletic setup position where they're sitting backwards, too much pressure into their heels. So I would still check for that handspan gap, end of the club to the top of my thigh, before opening my feet apart. There is a tilt forwards from the hips, definitely, but what you'll see, the slight change from an iron to a driver, is that my arms are actually slightly away from me rather than hanging straight down from my shoulders. And the only difference is the amount of pelvic tilt we create. So with an iron, we're tilting over a little bit further. That is actually helping our shoulders work slightly more on a vertical axis. Of course, it's not vertical, it's not horizontal, it's somewhere between the two, but it helps our shoulders work a little bit more vertically because we are trying to hit down on an iron more. Whereas with a drive, we're actually going for more of a sweeping swing where we're hitting slightly upwards on the golf ball. So although the distance gap is the same, end of the club to my body, there's not quite as much forward tilt from the hips with the driver, and that just means that my arms are slightly away from my body rather than hanging straight underneath my shoulders where they were with a mid-iron. So my arms have changed position slightly, but you'll have noted, as I said, that the gap from the end of the club to the body is the same. The difference between the two setup positions is the amount of tilt forwards from my hips. So it's more tilt forwards with an iron, creating a slightly steeper shoulder plane. There's a little bit less with the driver to try and create more of a rounded sweeping motion rather than a downward blow. I'm just going to go ahead and hit 2 shots. So I'm just going to hit one with my iron and one with my driver, trying to get that setup position correct. So, club at playing angle, ball in the middle of the club, 4-finger stretch gap, no thumb, end of the club to my body, open my feet apart, more pelvic tilts from my hips, try and feel my pressure out to my balls of my feet and allow my arms to hang. Let's hit one. Okay, that felt good, felt pretty solid. And now with the driver. So, still check that ball's in the middle of the club, club at playing angle, handspan gap, end of the club to my body before I open my feet apart. There is tilt forwards from my hips, just not as much as I was getting with the irons. And that means my arms are just slightly away from my body rather than hanging right underneath my shoulders. Let's give one of those a go. Again, a good, nice, solid strike, but I felt in a comfortable position, which is what I'm really asking you to try and get into. It's an athletic, comfortable position. Let me know how you get on with that simple exercise, just checking for that 4-finger stretch gap, end of the club to your body, just changing the difference in terms of the amount of pelvic tilt from an iron to a driver. Post some comments and questions below. Let me know what videos you'd like to see me film topics on. All our social media info is also coming along the bottom of the screen, so check us out on there. It's a great way to get in touch, and again, let me know any videos you'd like to see me film. Thanks guys, we'll see you soon.